all online, and I would like to welcome you to our webinar. This is a very hands-on, let's say, webinar, because we are focusing on realizing real-world benefits of DevSecOps. And DevSecOps is a very, let's say, well-known buzzword, but sometimes a bit less understood in its implications in real-life concept. Let's take the word itself. Could we please move to the next slide? It started from DevOps, and it started from DevOps around 2008. Let's say anecdotal history links this to discussions between development groups and people around Belgium around 2008. And the focus was back then in breaking down the wall of confusion that was separating the development groups within companies and the operations, because the priorities of these two groups were somewhat antagonistic. Development was constantly required to deliver new features, to be product oriented, to bring innovation, to bring speed and dynamism in the company, while operations were constantly tasked with ensuring stability, with being service-oriented, cutting down costs, rationalizing any changes, rationalizing all activities. And the way of moving forward, the way to move past these differences and embrace the support of the value delivered by the organization and the, let's say, higher level strategy of the organization, got the name DevOps, and it reflected in culture, it reflected in a ever-growing list of tools and best practices that were primarily coming from the Agile community, but also from operations and then developing cloud and infrastructure progress that was made. And it formed this, let's say, word. Slowly, it has even become a synonym for people who have the skills and the abilities related with this approach. Could you move to the next slide, please? The evolution in the market, the evolution all across the IT industry was quite significant in the start, and then it kind of plateaued into a mature state, but it has kept on organically growing, because now it's being accepted as the normality. It's become the majority practice that companies are embracing. And we can see that even in 2020, a time that has been quite challenged by pandemic and the changes in how users interact with providers and so on, the growth has been significant. From 2018, 2019, where we had the 48% of companies having a DevOps initiative in practice or in development, in 2020, 55% of the companies responding to the State of the Agile report were mentioning having a DevOps initiative currently underway. And these numbers are reflected in many other surveys. They're reflected in GitKraken, in GitLab, in Sonatype. All of the others are showing this significant improvement. And we can see that it is already out of the box of IT. It is out of the box of software development. It's permeating all industries throughout banking, technology, telecom, but also less obvious like education, retail, healthcare. Everywhere, DevOps is already a well-established. If you can have a look at the first bar in this series, DevOps is an already established practice and culture, but DevSecOps is coming very closely by, and it's growing more and more, and we estimate that it will reach parity, if you want, in many domains, especially the ones that are very sensitive to security. Could we move forward? Because security, unfortunately, like any third member of a group mixes everywhere. And security is actually very pervasive in its implications in the DevOps model. It's modifying the actual practices of how development and operations are doing every step of the way. We can see this is a very simplified view. It's a reference model that the US Department of Defense, well, we know something is already a serious thing when the state becomes involved in the US. And we can see that at every step throughout development and operations, there is some implication and there is some change to the way we work from the security, adding security to the mix. Could we move to the next one? And this leads to actually the right side of this slide. These are challenges. These are the top quoted challenges in many organizations, with talking surveys covering thousands of organizations, of what is preventing them from adopting the practices. And we can see that the top ones are about organizational resistance to change. They're diffused challenges, not enough leadership, inconsistent processes, organizational culture at odds with. How do we overcome these obstacles to change? And a very tangible response is what we are attempting in this webinar. If B.F. Skinner, one quite well-known psychologist, was suggesting that if you're old, such as our industry, don't try to change yourself, change your environment. And it was in the context that then the environment will shape your behaviors, and that will shape your mentality. And in a corporation, this is essentially culture. And we will bring the real world approach and how our tangible practices are implemented, let's say, and see how those can bring the change to DevSecOps into, have already brought it into many of our cases, and they can bring it into other organizations as well. André is definitely the best person to bring us into the reality of DevSecOps, and please carry on.
Thank you, Cătălin. Hi, everyone. So, as Cătălin said, the idea is to bring all these concepts of DevSecOps to reality, to realize these kind of benefits, and how can we do this on practice. And it's very important to understand what is this kind of environment change that we need to perform, what is the real improvements that we need to connect and bring to this reality. And to support this webinar and support this scenario and to show a real practice implementation of DevSecOps, let's bring a little bit about what is the context where we're gonna use DevSecOps. It's not limited to this scenario, but a very interesting way to apply it, and most of the value will be in our reality when we are talking about cloud native applications. So let's talk about DevSecOps on cloud native applications. The idea is to understand how these pillars from cloud native, how can we understand the real value of cloud native applications, and then connect a DevSecOps approach in practice to show how can we understand and realize most of these benefits. Okay, so cloud native applications are it's an approach based on mainly on 4 pillars. So the idea is to use DevOps and DevSecOps, as I said. So we're going to use that, the continuous delivery and the continuous integration, and of course a pipeline will be shown. And of course this is the kind of automation that we want to use in a DevSecOps environment. And the idea is to show a little bit of this running directly. As I said, in a cloud native approach, so we are based on microservices and containers, and the idea is to use this kind of architecture. And when I'm talking about this kind of architecture, for those that have not experienced it yet, this kind of architecture, the idea is that a monolith is an application that encapsulates most of the functions in a huge and big core. And when you need to maintain this kind of application, or when we need to create any kind of improvement or evolution of this kind of application, you have to think in the whole application. You have to connect and understand the impact of it. And of course, it's much, much more complex to maintain, to sustain, and of course, improve it in production. So the monolith is a huge application and highly complex to extend, to integrate, and so on. It's a much more traditional approach for application. And when we are talking about microservices, we are talking about taking this whole monolith and understand it as small services talking together with specialized APIs, with specialized communication channels. And when we are talking about these small pieces, we have a very interesting way to update, to make it parallel, to understand how to scale it, and of course optimize our resources. And the idea is to use the whole benefits of DevSecOps to accelerate and to deliver and integrate all these benefits directly to each microservices. And this is the scenario. So the idea here is to talk a little bit how to implement DevSecOps in a microservices scenario. By this way, I can show the most of these benefits, but of course we can extend it to monolith and more traditional architectures too. Okay. So about these benefits, what we are looking for, an important point to talk is what we are focusing when we are talking about a DevSecOps initiative. So as I'll present to you and demonstrate in practice, the idea is to be very agile. So we need to bring all this autonomy to all the teams, to the squads, and they need to understand what is the value that they're producing, and they need to have the capacity to bring new environments and new microservices to life without any kind of help of other teams. So by this way, they are independent, and this is directly connected to the fast delivery. So if I bring this capacity to the team, I'm able to make a fast delivery team. The reliability of the content need to be automated, so I need to test the quality, the web performance, and I'll show how to do that on practice. But the idea is to bring this kind of reliability to reality and make it happen directly on the software and on each microservice. Okay, the scale, this is related to the capacity of design a scalable architecture and integrate that directly on DevSecOps. So I started talking about cloud. So the idea to be integrated on cloud is the next generation application. So most of them are already running there. It's already a reality, and we need to bring this kind of scalability directly from the DevSecOps environment, and need to be integrated. We don't need to scale it manually, and we need to understand and improve this directly on DevSecOps. Okay. Collaboration, it's an important point, and it's directly connected to security. So when I'm talking about collaboration, I'm talking about the team collaboration, the collaboration between developers and operation. And when I'm talking about DevSecOps, I'm also collaborating with security. So I understand their patterns. I'll implement it directly on my pipeline. I'll check that dynamically since from the development stage of my software. And by this way, I can deliver the right indicators, the right assurance to my security team. And by this way, we are integrating the security directly on the squads. So this profile is now part of this multi-skill team. Okay. So with this focus, with these benefits, it's a little bit important to explain how can we integrate and bring all these together. So the sample that we're going to cover today, the idea is that we're going to implement this pipeline inside a DevSecOps environment. So the idea is to talk a little bit about analysis stage. So in the analysis stage, we are talking about static code analysis. We are talking about security, static security analysis. So this is a very important point. And of course, I'll show you how to integrate, for example, container auditing if we are using the best practice to deliver the right container, the right image in production. Okay. The build and deploy, talking together here, we have operational stage where we need to integrate and automate, and we don't need to do that manually for years. So it's also integrating the DevSecOps environment. So most of you already have conducted a Devops or CI/CD pipeline, and of course the build and deploy are already integrated there. And so this is the a really interesting point. Between the build and deploy, we have the scanning stage, and the scanning stage is a very important point when we are talking about integrating microservices, integrating libraries, integrating other companies, other services. So we need to scan if we are using the right version, if we have vulnerabilities, none from the package that we are importing to our project. So my code has been scanned, but I need to understand what is the vulnerabilities that I'm importing from other projects. So here is the most important point of scanning what I'm using and what is the vulnerabilities and the security concerns regarding the package that I'm using directly on my image. So the scanning step is very important. After I build, I need to understand how I'm being affected from third-party projects or other teams' projects and so on. And after the deploy, I need to test everything running directly on tracks. So here I'm talking about web performance, directly automated, and we will show the results about it. How can I test the performance of the software if it's right to the patterns that we have defined for this project? The stress testing is very important to be integrated. So when I'm talking about stress testing, I'm also able to integrate here, for example, pen testing. So by this way, I can guarantee that what is in production are performing and bringing all the reliability that we want to for the software after the deploying. And at the end, the most important step for me at this point is to run a test. So I have realized the security of the code, the security of the package, audited the image, but I need to run a dynamic test for security on my image. And by this way, I can understand, according to OWASP, what is the vulnerabilities, what is the CVEs that I need to be concerned, and I'll show a little bit more how to do that. An important point is that to do all of this manually is not feasible. So I'll start to do some steps and jump over others. So the best way to guarantee that I'll run this for every new version and the quality will be assured is to have all of these automated. So an important point for this kind of initiative and sharing part of this experience is automate everything. Every step needs to be understood. And as I have represented here, we're gonna use this result to create gates. So operational gates where we are not operating really well on build or on deploy. We have problems here. We have warnings here that we are not gonna enable this kind of failing. So we have a decision gate here, or we have quality gates. When I'm talking about quality gates, I'm talking about security gates, I'm talking about code quality gate, or of course, web performance gate. So when I'm talking about this, I'm talking that only the quality assured software will be on production. And by this way, I'm able to bring all these to reality. I'm able to integrate all this kind of technology directly in production. Okay. So this is how we have designed it. This is how we have constructed. And let's enter a little bit in the most interesting part from my side, which is the demonstration and show how this can be implemented on practice. And of course, what is the result that we are able to produce with this kind of understanding. Okay. The first part of this demonstration, I'll show you how we are able to organize the environments in the scenario. So the most important point when I'm talking about the DevSecOps is that I need to standardize my environments. I need to have a pattern. When I have a pattern, I'm able to manage, I'm able to improve security of every environment by the same time. I'm able to bring new practices and new technologies every day. And by this way, I have a much simpler way to maintain that. So this kind of standardization, it's a very good strategy. I know that's not possible every time, but of course, where we are able to do that, this is the most interesting point. And it's directly integrated to scalability. So as I'll show you guys, the idea is that when I have this kind of scalability, I'm able to reuse most of the resources from this scalability directly in the other environments. And by this way, I'm able to share and optimize my resources. It's a very important point. Of course, identity management, it's an important point of concern here. As you can see, the idea is that the environment where we have direct interaction from the developers has a different administration from the production environment. Why we do that? We do that as a best practice, just to separate, segregate that. And by this way, I'm able to automate, orchestrate, and bring all the version to production in automatically way. But when I'm talking administration, I have a separate interface for that. So this is a very interesting point to manage this kind of scenario, okay? And of course, when I'm talking about each of these environment, the idea and the concept here, I'll demonstrate based on a Kubernetes environment. I'll show you in a real world project. And the idea is to show how we have prepared that, how we are using that, and how we are orchestrating the CI/CD, okay? So let's go to deep dive a little bit about these results. As I said, here I'm using Anchor, okay, just to show and make it a little bit more graphical to you guys. But the idea is to show that all these environments that I'm talking to you, these three integrated here in the same interface are available here. So all these clusters, by this way, I'm able to bring the same registry to them. And by this way, I'm able to deliver the right images in an automatic way directly from my Git environment. And of course, when I deliver that, I'm able to separate and bring the right variables, the right environment variables to production right here, okay? Here I have a simple project that I took. So as you can see, they are separated in so many microservices. The idea is to understand how we are working with each of them, how we are delivering on each of them. The most important point is that when I took this kind of architecture, I'm able to get most of this kind of approach on DevSecOps. And when I'm talking about that, I'll took the front-end microservices and how can we work and deliver this value in this kind of automation directly there. So here, as you can see, we have prepared a pipeline at this project with those steps that I presented in the previous slide. So here I have automated all these gates. I'm able to see, for example, if I have warnings or if I have something that I'm not running pretty well. And by this way, I'm able to stop my process, understand what is happening, and of course, bring much more maturity to my process. So the idea is to have this kind of, or this level of maturity directly, okay? Focusing directly on security, as I said, for SAST, most of you should know about SonarQube. So SonarQube is a solution for static analysis, and here we are able to talk about security stack analysis. But the idea is not to run my code manually on SonarQube, understand the result, interpret this kind of result, and then bring this decision making to my process manually. The idea is to be integrated. The project is automatically generated there. This is analyzed, and all the results are directly integrate, and all these metrics are imported into my process. So the idea is to be imported here. When I'm talking about specific security steps, I'm talking about auditing my image. So the idea is to audit and understand the value of this image regarding the best practices on container generation. By this way, my Docker file are being audited, and I'm able to guarantee that I'm doing that in the right concerns regarding security. Okay. From scanning, I'm able also to scan all the process, all the libraries and all the packages that I'm importing. And by this way, I'm able to see that I'm using, for example, Muscle, I'm using libgencrypt, and all of them has run non-CVEs, and I need to deal with that. I need to analyze, and I need to have to take a decision if I'm able to be okay with that, if it's exploitable in my scenario, and of course, if I have any kind of limitation to put this kind of solution in production with this kind of warning. So as you can see, before deploying, I'm able to see the vulnerabilities from my application from here or from the package that I'm integrating, and it's directly and automated in practice. After the deploy, of course, let's test. Let's test this application. Let's understand what is the performance and how it's performing. So the test, as you can see, I'm able to run the security validation over my image after the deploy. So as I can see, I'm not able to see these CVEs directly in production, so it's not exploitable. Here I have a package to automate this, and it should be directly integrated. I'm not here to talk of any kind of specific package or technology. Here I'm using GitLab package just to demonstrate and show how this kind of implementation can bring value to us. But of course, you can use here Palo Alto or any other solution, which is very interesting to do this kind of validation. And of course, all these tests should be validated, and all these warnings should be considered when I'm delivering this in production. After the point that I fully understand that the value that I'm producing is okay, all my requirements are being attended from my agile development, and now I know that my, as I can say, non-functional requirements are being attended to according to my pattern and according to my security design inside my business. And the web performance, of course, will measure most of the indicators from the application. So I'm able to understand how I'm performing, how it's been impacted. And from here, of course, the engineers are able to understand the impact and go deep until the waterfall analysis, understand what is the component that are taking most of the time into load, how we are running, how much time we are taking to respond. And I have including a video demonstrating how was the access during the web performance. And by this way, I have the raw traceability of my project. I'm able to get this result, understand what happened, and of course, came back and understand what is the value that I'm producing. When I'm talking about this kind of evolution, is that I have this automation, I have this information being generated, and all my decision-making process are being automated together. So I have manual decisions to do here, but most of them are being automated. By this way, I'm bringing autonomy to my development team, and my squads are gaining this kind of result, and it's a very interesting approach. Okay, so understood. And as we saw, this is a very practical approach, how we should implement this pipeline, how I integrate it in a DevSecOps approach for my whole environment. What is the values that I can bring? What should I measure? And that's the most important point. When I'm automating it, it's the best way to create a site management approach. So I need to create, and everyone needs to know what is the right indicators of my project. Everyone needs to understand what is the right indicators and how to qualify my application. Part of these indicators, as I said, are being used in the operational and quality gates, but part of these indicators are being used to improve my process, to build up my team, and by this way bring new practices to this reality. So for example, I have here a simple subset of these indicators that I can produce them automatically from the pipeline, and by this way I can bring this value to the decision makers. As I can say, the quality indicators I exploited a lot in this call already. So we talked about the quality of the code that being delivered, but we have some, for example, pipeline indicators. How many times we are taking running this whole pipeline? It's an important point. I'll show this in practice. How we should take this decision based on the pipeline. We should understand this on practice. But we can also understand what is not in the pipeline. So how long does we are taking to get a function directly from my backlog to the production environment? What is my lead time? How long our internal clients are taking to homologate or to release our new version, or to approve to release this new version? It's a very important point. What is our best microservices for maintenance? We should understand that. What is the availability of my environment and my application after I deliver that? It's a very important point, and understand the production performance. It's a very interesting way to understand how I'm improving it. Security, we are already talked, and we are able to create this kind of scan, and we are able to create this kind of score to my application on dynamic and static analysis. I'm able to bring here some financial indicators, for example, what I'm losing on team productivity, or what I'm losing with coding rework, or even with optimization. And here I'll talk a little bit more later in this presentation how we are able to manage the financial gains with this kind of initiative. Of course, we need to show the return on investment to our sponsors internally. So it's a very interesting way. And the reuse, this is an indicator, an important indicator when we are getting even more mature in this kind of approach. So here you are able to measure and understand how much of your software or how many of your microservices are being reused from other projects, from other softwares, or from your library. So it's a very interesting point to be integrated. By this way, you are able to understand if you are building something to be reused internally, for example, for authentication, for notification, for presentation or reports presentation. So these are some modules or microservices that are able to be reused, even if I'm dealing with too many types of projects. And understand a little bit better how this can be implemented. As I said, I'm able to read directly from the pipeline how much of that I'm being generating with this kind of implementation with the current software. So here I have that of 7 minutes. How long I'm taking to understand that I have a bad version. So as you can see, to run and understand and identify this problem, I take almost 2 hours in this project. So I have to optimize that. It's much away from my target. And of course, to understand that I have a really good version to put in production, I take 33 minutes. So it's a very interesting way, and I can exploit most of these indicators, and I can explore and understand how I'm measuring, how I'm performing, how many issues I'm generating on each version that I'm releasing the whole project, how I'm combining, and where is my debt based on components. By this way, I understand what is the squads that are producing most of these debits, and by this way, I'll enter and deep dive on each of these numbers until the end of the result. The idea is to connect everything, and by this way, this kind of site management are able to become a reality. When I'm talking about automated environment, and of course, I'm thinking on indicators on the implementation. It's a very important point, okay? And all these indicators, when I start in combining it, I'm able to bring the right vision to a service manager, for example, to a director, to executive, to a vice president. So all of them have their own questions, their own performance questions, and their own targets. And the idea is to bring the right vision to them, to combine, and of course, consolidate all these numbers, bringing the insights to the business. So the idea is to do that in the most interesting way. And with a DevSecOps, the right DevSecOps implemented, as I have shown, I'm able to create this kind of combination, okay? So we have understood the DevSecOps approach. We took a cloud native design approach just to show what is the most value that we can extract from here, what is the real benefits that we can integrate. We have understood and saw a real life pipeline running, integrating a DevSecOps environment, the organization and the indicators that we are able to extract. But let's understand how we can convert and understand it on money. So when we are talking about the return on investment on this kind of solution or on this kind of approach, we have a bunch of points of analysis where we can search and understand what is the gains that we are having to the business. But here I have separated 3 of them, which are direct, and this one I'm able to understand and see and measure the gain directly on real life. So unavailability loss, as we got here a report from IDC. As you can see, we have today a lot of loss with unavailability on production environments. And when I'm talking about DevSecOps and orchestration and automation, I'm talking about a self-healing environment where we are able to get the service back online in an automatic manner. I'm able to test and deploy only the most quality application. So this is an important point for unavailability. And by this way, I'm able to recover most of these losses regarding unavailability. Okay. The second point, we already talked about rework, as I have shown, debit, as I have shown on the dashboard. We have productivity loss from our development team, recovering from incidents, understanding problems, and of course, rewriting parts of the code where we have not tested in the proper way. So by this way, we are able to recover per year, per developer, more than 500 hours on average. So by this way, we are able to recover all these hours from every developer every year when we are talking about this automated and quality guaranteed environment, and but of course bring this to real life. And looking for these ops from DevSecOps, so the operational way we are deploying all these environments, we can bring from the standardization a strategy, for example, using this demonstrated environment. All these environments I'm able to orchestrate and use spots from public cloud. So as you can see, I'm using the idle space that they have in their own data centers. They have a lot of it. And from there, I'm able to take 60, 70, or 80% on savings when I'm talking about these environments which are orchestrated, but I'm still able to guarantee the high availability with the right orchestration and the right way to understand when I need to change these spots, do this seamlessly, and of course bring this result. Here I have a small image from a real world environment here in Stefanini from our SaaS infrastructure, and currently I'm talking about an environment running on 61% on saving, and from here I'm not I'm not losing availability, I'm not losing productivity, I'm delivering all of it orchestrated, I'm just making money with all these results, okay? So the return on investment is a very important point. And understood how we can implement, how can we realize this kind of benefits. This is not the end of the journey. So we have much more to bring even more results. So as you can see, DevSecOps is only the beginning of the journey. The idea here is to bring you guys some insights on what is our approach, how can we do that, but in this journey, you can do much more. You can integrate it to a SRE approach, so bringing the business together to the squad, and by this way bringing automation, continuous improvement, and a whole methodology for observability, for example. So the SRE here open a whole bunch of possibilities where we can talk later about it, but it's a very interesting point to improve. When we need to talk about career path, it's a very interesting point when we are talking about how to have the right team and the right people to do this kind of transformation, how we should bring these guys to reality, to this kind of reality, how to bring the multi-cloud strategy to this kind of DevSecOps approach. So I need to extend it to most of the cloud providers. It's a very interesting point. We should not deliver in a single one. We should exploit most of the benefits on each of them. And of course, as I talked about cloud native, that modernization is a very interesting point to get most value of this kind of solution, or to get most of this for this solution. Okay. So this is all the content that I had to present. And of course, I'd like to thank you all. Thank you, Cătălin, too, for this kind of presentation. And we have 2 minutes more for some simple question, if we have any.
Yeah. 2 minutes is not going to be enough for a proper Q&A, because we actually would like to give the proper attention to any questions you might have. Please feel free to reach to us through our website and our social presence, and we'll make sure to come back to you. Also, the recording will be sent out, or well, a reference to it. And let's keep in touch on these subjects later on.
Okay, thank you, Cătălin. Thank you all, audience, and let's keep in touch. I'm available for the doubts. Okay.
And have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.